All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Like I said in my little post that I sent out the other day, I have a special guest this week, and she is with our brokerage down in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're both in resort areas, so I thought it'd be fun to have somebody on that has similarities, but yet is in a totally different world. So let me introduce Sean Shackleton to everybody. Hey, Sean.
Hi, how are
If you
you?
want to give a little intro or tell everyone who you are and how you
Sure.
got here and all of that.
Oh my gosh, how I got here. That's a long story. So I'm Sean Shackleton. I am a real estate agent in Scottsdale, Arizona, so very much a resort town. Been practicing real estate for 25 years. Started really in that resort golf industry, worked for a developer for 10 years, and then kind of left them and have been in just general real estate ever since and love it.
And I'm sorry, I was trying to get something pulled up over
Multitask.
here. Um, did you say that you were in a different resort area before Phoenix?
I was. So when I first got my real estate license back in 1998, I was in Flagstaff, Arizona. And that was another, primarily resort kind of community. We were catering primarily to the people that were down in the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley area that wanted to get out of the heat in the summertime, and they would come up to Flagstaff. And then I went with a developer, I went to Lake Tahoe, again, kind of another resort area in Northern California, and then ended up back in Scottsdale with them when they did another development called Silverleaf here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah, you guys have a ton. Do you have any idea how many golf courses you have down there in
We
Phoenix?
have, I want to say that just in Scottsdale, this sounds really high, but for some reason I want to say 200. That sounds really high, but I mean, there's a lot. I mean, from my house, and I'm in North Scottsdale, from my house, I think I can probably get to about 10 or 15 golf courses within about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're probably right. I used to take care of golf courses back in my previous lifetime, and um, I was in the Palm Springs, California area, and we had over 100 courses down there, and that's way smaller than your valley.
Yeah. I
So
mean, the Phoenix, I still call it the Phoenix Open. They call it the Waste Management, but that from my house is about 5 minutes.
nice.
Yeah.
That's quite the event.
It is quite the event. It is, I always tell people, I'm like, go for the people watching. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced, for sure.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, Sean and I work at the same brokerage. Obviously, we're in two different areas, but I wanted to have her on because we're both in resort areas and we both have, busy and slow times, and we've both had a huge influx. Talk to us a little bit about, if you saw the same as we did up here, after Rona, as I like to call it, and
Right.
or if it started, you guys probably started before that. We were down in Phoenix, I guess it was last winter for a little bit. I have a friend down there, and that place is just, I went there on spring break when I was in college 100 years ago. And I mean, that place is just enormous now.
It's growing so much. I mean, I've been here since 2001, and the way that it's changed is pretty remarkable. What I love though still is that it's one of the best planned cities, the city of Scottsdale specifically. It wins awards and all of that all the time by how it's planned. My father-in-law was a city planner, and every time he would come into Scottsdale to visit, he would always point something out that I didn't recognize as being unique, but he saw it from a city planning standpoint. Like where I live in Scottsdale, like there's no billboards on the freeway, and I take it for granted because I drive it all the time and I just don't see them. But then as soon as you get into Phoenix, there's billboards on the sides of the freeways, and we just don't have that. And it's nice. It makes it's clean. It feels cleaner. It feels, just less cluttered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, and I've talked about this on my channel a ton and on my videos a ton. Montana is interesting, and the people that want to move up here are also interesting that a lot of people want to get away from all the regulations like no billboards or, pick a regulation. They don't want any government control, but
Yeah.
then what happens is, and I've helped a lot of people. I want to live out where there's no covenants, and I don't want any zoning, and I want to do what I want. Well, that sounds great until somebody moves next door and decides to, start a pig farm or put in a landfill or,
Yep.
whatever, whatever they do. And then people don't think the laws are so bad.
I know. And I've got some of that too, because Scottsdale as a whole, I mean, anybody that comes here, there's subdivisions all over, but there are places within Scottsdale that have no HOAs. And I've got people that come and they're like, I don't want to live in an HOA. Like, I don't like them. I don't want it. And right north of us is Cave Creek and Carefree, and those areas too kind of blend in with us. And there's in Cave Creek more specifically, there's some areas that really don't have HOAs. And it's the same thing. I take them in there and we drive around and they're like, but I don't like that house. That doesn't look nice. And that doesn't look nice. I'm like, there's good and bad about HOAs. And I get it. I mean, I live in an HOA. I'm grateful that mine's not really, really strict and crazy. And I know some that are, but I heard the same thing with people coming into Scottsdale. Like, I want to live there, but I don't want a really strict HOA. I came from that, or I've experienced it, and I don't want it.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fine line. And yeah, some HOAs just go wild. There's one right here in Whitefish, the town I live in, that I think the last time I sold a place in there and sent the covenants, it was like 200 pages.
Oh,
and it's just
so the developer that I worked for previous, the community is called DC Ranch, and there's DC Ranch and then there's Silverleaf. And literally when you sell a home or buy a home, they send landscape inspectors to your house. I won't say what I call them because I don't want to offend anybody, but they inspect not only your front yard, but your backyard. And they send this list of the vegetation that is allowed and not allowed, and the placement in, how far apart they need to be spaced. And I mean, when they changed that, it caused massive problems because of course the buyer thinks, well, if the seller doesn't do that, then I'm going to get fined, and all this from the HOA. I mean, they had to they still do it, but now I always tell them, like, they can't do anything. They can't take you to like HOA jail, if you don't do this. And I don't know anybody that's been fined. Now you're going to have to get that information from them, talk to them about it. But I know nobody that has been fined by having these plants in your yard. But it really causes alarm for buyers when they go in there and they're like, oh my gosh, the HOA is telling me that all these things are wrong in my yard. And I don't want, it's not my responsibility. And it's like, oh boy, I got to pull people off the ceiling,
Yeah. Same thing up here. There's, and the other interesting thing up here is a lot of the HOAs are so lenient that they've almost gone, they're almost too lenient in that respect, because the problem is they don't, this guy, let's say they don't allow, shops. Everybody up here wants a shop. Well, then one guy builds a shop like people do and asks for forgiveness later. And then they build it, and then the HOA doesn't do anything. Well, then the next guy wants to put up a, white vinyl fence that irritates the neighbor. And he's like, well, this guy built the shop. I can do what I want. And, then all the covenants kind of go out the window.
Yeah.
And they have a hard time. They have a hard time enforcing anything because they went down the road of letting people get away with stuff. And, then where do you draw the line again?
Right. I know it's hard because where I am and where I sell primarily, we're right at the base of a mountain. Now from Montana, you would not call it a mountain, but we call it a mountain here. But all the houses are primarily brown. And I always laugh because I've had clients look at me and they're like, well, now can I paint the outside of the house? And I'm like, sure. What color brown would you like?
Yeah.
I mean, and there's specific colors and they can, but I mean, the color of your house is dictated by the HOA and it's really specific. And here are the colors. And if it needs to be two-tone, like here's the base color and here's the accent color you can pick. And, so people like it, but they don't like it, but I think all in all, in certain communities, they understand that it really is enforcing those to everybody, and therefore it does uphold the property values.
Well, and that's the whole key. And that's what I tell people that get annoyed by all the covenants is that, when the guy does move in next door, when you don't have covenants and, there's trash piles everywhere, what does that do to your home value?
Right.
Is that what you want? Do you still want all that freedom then?
Right.
And that's the chance you're taking, is that you don't have any say in what your neighbor does. You may not have laws, but neither do they.
Right.
So, and speaking of laws, I told you a little bit about it. I go through the police report every time we do these live shows. So we'll go through the police report. And since you're new, Sean, this is the funniest thing about these is that these are all real and out of the paper. And the thing you have to keep in mind when I read these is that people actually called the police, and this is what they said.
I love this.
So here's the first one for this week. Someone thought it was suspicious that a man was walking around Kalispell with cameras on his hat. The person filing the report suspected it was someone working for Google Earth,
Oh,
but they
boy.
called the cops on the guy.
That's hilarious.
And then this one's pretty standard. A horse was running down the freeway, except we don't have freeways here, so I'm not sure where they were talking about.
And that's standard.
Yeah, well, the horse is being loose.
Right.
And we got a dog howling at the moon. Then someone said a scammer pretended to be a friend of theirs who was imprisoned for hitting on a pregnant woman. And then it goes on to say the victim agreed to pay the $8,000 bail before calling their actual friend and realizing they were at work.
Oh, boy.
Someone got scammed there. Roughly a dozen cows were walking down the road.
I can't tell. This puts so much into perspective for me.
And then the cows decided to hole up on a property they didn't belong on. So very bad cows. And then Kalispell business owner removed all the benches on the sidewalk in front of their business, not realizing they were city-owned benches. I'm not sure who else would put benches out there, but someone reported a man on an electric scooter who ran a red light.
Mm-hmm.
A woman stole some beer from a convenience store, then returned a few minutes later to ask if the police had been called on her yet. And then finally, the last one of the week. 2 men scouting a potential hunting area spooked a grizzly bear, and one friend accidentally shot the other in the shoulder while aiming for the bear.
That's not
And
good.
that is, I read the article about that in the paper. That is a true story and not a good story, but
no.
Yeah, I think the one guy got mauled a little bit.
Oof.
So not good.
That's not good.
That's something you guys do not have down there.
We do not have that, but I will tell you that just this last, I think it was just last summer, because we were so hot. Again, the mountains that I live by, the McDowells, there's 1 or 2 mountain lion that actually live in there. And because it was so hot and so dry, the mountain lion was caught drinking out of somebody's pool this summer.
Yeah, well, and now you're kind of seeing it all over the country with everybody having those Ring cameras.
Yeah.
They're catching stuff that normally people wouldn't have seen before. So
yeah, for sure.
Let's go through some of the questions. And by the way, we don't have tons of questions yet. So if anybody has any, it can be about, just Montana, Arizona, whatever you want. We are here to answer. Let's go to the first one. From Chad, my wife and I are moving up to Columbia Falls next month. Can you talk about the safety in the local communities whose crime is higher on average? That I'm not sure if you're still on. This message was left at 1:30 this afternoon. But if you are, I don't know where you're coming from, but our crime up here is, because per capita, it may look worse than it truly is. I used to live down in bigger areas, so the crime here is really not, again, I'm not sure where you're coming from, but you can't. There's not one town that is like, oh my God, you can't move there. It's horrible. So uh, I don't think you have much to worry about. So that's my 2 cents there. This one applies to you, Sean. What would the average monthly HOA fee be in Montana versus Arizona?
Oof.
Do you have any averages there, or are they kind of all over the map?
They are all over the map. I mean, we again, it's going to depend on where you're living, but like where I am in some of the golf communities, you're going to range anywhere HOA wise from like 200 up to like 1,000 a month.
Yeah, and that's the same thing here. I don't know of any that are 1,000, but most of them are pretty cheap. Most of them are maybe a couple $100, or some of them are a couple $100 per quarter, because most of the HOAs, all they do is all they use the money for is plowing the snow in the winter.
Oh yeah.
Some of them, obviously, the gated communities that have a lot of common areas and parks and whatever, those will be more pools. But probably 90% of the HOAs that I deal with around here are very cheap, because it's just basically for snow plowing. Or this is another thing you guys probably don't have down there, but a lot of the rural subdivisions will have community water. So they'll have a big well that feeds all the homes in the subdivision, and then they have to do testing. They're actually almost more strict than the city. They have to do more testing on those wells, and they test them 2 or 3 times a year. And some of the HOA fees goes to that. So they're way cheaper, I'm guessing, than down there. Let's see. Mike, do you know if there's a way to invest in property with IRA and 401k money like Montana land? Yeah, I would talk to your tax guy. It's just going to depend on how your IRA and 401 is set up, and taking money out of that. The 1031 exchange is kind of a different deal, but it is a tax savings that you can do. But I don't know am I missing something here, Sean?
No, I mean, again, it's funny. I was just talking to my financial planner and my CPA because, taxes were due. And they were both saying, they know people that do use that money. They're not, mine specifically, they're not fans of it, because then you kind of lose some of that gain that you could be sitting on. But I mean, I think it's all individual for the person, but I agree with you. I would talk to your financial advisor, your CPA about it.
Yeah. Robert, I live in New Jersey and like watching Montana news online much better than the New York City news. Yeah.
I could imagine.
Probably a little more entertaining and not so depressing, I'm guessing.
Right.
Richard, hello from South Carolina. How's the weather? Well, the weather in my town is a little overcast. We were out earlier this afternoon. It was about 60 degrees, so it's still nice fall weather. How about down in Phoenix? Is still hot?
We were really excited, and we were outside today and it was 90. We were like, yes, we were under 100.
Hey, you guys kind of had a brutal summer down there, didn't you?
Brutal. It was really, I don't know anybody that I talked to that has lived here for any length of time that didn't say, whew, this was a rough one.
Yeah. I remember seeing it on the news. Didn't you guys have like over a month straight of over 110 or something?
Yeah, July. It was so intense. I mean, we went on vacation. We were in Utah for a week after 4th of July, and we kept looking at the weather like, you do when you're gone. You're like, yes, we went out of town the right time because it was so hot. We got back and they're like, no, it's going to stay here for the whole month. It was, yeah, we were 110 plus really through the month of July.
Yeah.
But our weather's coming when everybody else will be jealous of us because we're
still running
in shorts and t-shirts.
This guy says getting cold here in Montana already. Yeah, it actually, I saw on the news, we had some rain yesterday, I think, and down in Big Sky, which is quite a ways south of here, they already got snow up on the mountains up there, and they're promoting their ski resort, so they were all excited about that. And then we got Dwayne, one of our regulars. Hey, Dwayne. It's probably getting cold up in Edmonton by now as well. Let's see. I miss the cold and the snow, but upstate New York uses road salt. It's our car ruiner. There's another thing that Sean doesn't have to worry about down in Phoenix.
Not really, but I do know about it.
You've heard about it.
Well, living in Flagstaff, we did have snow, so I did, but yeah, I didn't know all the things. They use cinders when I lived up there, but now they've started using salt, and yeah, I didn't know that it ruined cars because I grew up in Southern California, so it was a brand new eye-opening experience for me for sure.
Yeah. And hello, Gordon from Eureka. Then Dwayne, is there any wildlife that goes into towns in Montana? Is it an issue? Yes and yes. I've seen coyotes in Edmonton. Yeah, we get pretty much everything. We've had, just in my neighborhood, I've seen bear, I've seen moose, we have 1 million deer in town. In fact, too many deer in town. So there's mountain lions that sometimes go around and collect people's pets. So yeah, we have it all. Let's see. KW, I've seen some high-rise condos near Kierland with
That's in
HOAs.
Arizona.
Is that, so this is
Yeah,
you?
that's near me. Yeah. And she's not, or KW, you're not wrong. They're high-rise condos at the Optima. And the way that they calculate their HOAs is by square footage, but they also calculate the part of their square footage is their patio, their outdoor space. And some of them have 1,000 square foot patios. So it just adds to their HOAs, and it's expensive.
Huh.
Yeah. Not wrong.
So when you say high rise, like how high are they down there?
We have height restrictions in Scottsdale, and so I think it's a 45. So they're mid-rise, really, is what they're considered as far as the condos are concerned. So I think they're 5, 6 stories.
Oh, not 20.
Not massive. No, we have pretty strict height restrictions here.
Gotcha. And we got Jack Daniel, status of Black Butte copper mine in White Sulphur Springs. I apologize. I have no idea. Sorry about that. Dwayne, it's warm in Edmonton, 60s and 70s. Except you guys do it in Celsius up there, Dwayne. Let's see. Well, let's get back into what we were talking about earlier. So back to buying, like I was telling you before we went on the air, our busy times are like right now. Believe it or not, our busiest closing month is October, and it's because most people they want to use their places up here all summer long, and then they want to sell before the snow flies. So everyone will put their house on the market the end of August and September, and then they'll sell. And then October is, like I said, our busiest closing month. So everything's done and taken care of before the snow starts flying, because moving is bad enough in nice weather. Nobody wants to move when it's a blizzard. What about down in your area?
So I talk about this on my channel a lot too. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. So I do have another, that's one of the ways that Will and I have known one another. I have my own YouTube channel, and I talk about it a lot on my channel, that a lot of people in other parts of the world talk about summer being their busiest season, and kind of for obvious reasons. Ours is not necessarily the busiest time of our selling season is during the summer, because it's so hot. Like, you don't want to move in a blizzard. People don't want to move in 115 degree weather. So we see a slowdown in the summertime, and then it starts to pick back up right around now through October. November, we start to see a little bit of a slowdown towards the end during the holidays through December, and then mid-January, and we start to pick right back up again. But like we were talking about earlier, it's not selling a house or buying a house in the summertime is not always a bad thing, because sometimes you can have less competition, both for buying and for selling. And the end of our year, like you were saying, the end of your year, or this right now is your biggest month. Our biggest months are January, February, March, April We usually see big months those months. But for buyers that are looking here to get the best deal, like buy at the end of the year. This was 2 years ago, still during all the crazy time. I had a client, we were looking for a house and we had been outbid. And then it was December. And the market started shifting just a little bit, not drastically, but shifting enough that I knew that this house that was on the market, that we could make an offer, we could negotiate a little bit. They got a deal. And I'm not kidding you, that January, we closed in beginning of January, end of December. That next January, mid-January, because I put my parents' house on the market, I had 13 offers and it went over $200,000 over the list price. And it was bananas. So we just squeaked in right there. So the end of our year for buyers is a really good time for them to try to get a deal, because these sellers are like, I don't want to go into the new year with this house. I just want to be done with it. I want it to be over. And so people can find some deals at the end of the year.
Yeah. All right. We have a good one here that will relate to both of us. Pickleball has been becoming popular. Big Fork has indoor pickleball. Has anything been built in Whitefish or Kalispell? Yes. Kalispell, I've actually played down at the one in Kalispell. It's called the Pickle Barn, I believe, or the Barn. But I think there's 6 courts in there. And I know that they're working on doing a new one up here in Whitefish. They're building more outdoor ones. I'm guessing down in Phoenix, it's huge.
Huge, like massive. And so much so that abandoned grocery stores, they're starting to do indoor pickleball courts within those spaces because they're so big. In my community, this was, probably 8-10 years ago. They took out volleyball courts and they took over some of the tennis courts and they made pickleball courts. Well, the place that they did it is pretty close to some homes. And now the homeowners are upset about the noise. And they're talking about putting blankets on the walls because these are outdoor ones, they've had to reduce the hours that people play. Every time I'm there, it is packed with people playing pickleball.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and in the news, all these commercial spots, commercial buildings that are sitting empty and vacant, and yeah, I'm guessing that'll go in. Another thing I saw, and I'm sure you guys have it down there, but I have a buddy that lives in Kansas City. I grew up with him, and he actually told me about it, so I got online. But someone's franchising it now, and it looks cool, where it's a kind of a bar restaurant that's surrounded by pickleball courts, and they have leagues, and so you go there, and then afterwards you just stay and have beers or whatever. I mean,
great way to make a bunch of money.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that reminds me, again, 100 years ago, right when I got out of college, I was working at a place down in Atlanta, and it was called the Field of Dreams, and it was a softball complex, and it was the same thing. There were 6 or 8 fields that surrounded this giant clubhouse, and everybody would show up for leagues. And then, you go in there and they replayed the games on, back then that was kind of a big deal. They would replay the games inside in the bar, and you'd sit around, drink beer, and watch the other people play. And it seems like, with pickleball, that's where it's kind of going, that it's turning into this huge social thing that's almost taken over golf. It's way cheaper to build.
Crazy. Anybody that I know that has played it, they are like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. I loved it. I haven't played. It looks fun, but I haven't done it.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's fun. Let's see. Is the local market in Flathead County still strongly in favor of sellers, or is it starting to become more balanced? It's definitely becoming more balanced. The sellers that, are thinking that they should get what they would have gotten 3 years ago are finding out that they're not going to. So we're seeing a lot of price reductions. We're seeing a lot of, sellers now that, a couple years ago, if you made an offer contingent on your house in Phoenix selling, they wouldn't even, they would laugh at you and throw it in the garbage. Now they're more willing to take those offers. Are you kind of seeing the same thing down there?
A little bit. I mean, our market's still pretty it's still pretty heavy. It's still weighted towards the sellers and not near as heavy as it was. But if there's a house that goes on the market that's updated in a good location and priced well, I mean, and if all those things are good, then you can still push the price. We're still seeing multiple offers. But if the house needs some work and it's maybe not in the best area and it has a great view and the whole thing, then yeah, I mean, people like you just said, people that have a contingency, if it's been sitting on the market for a little while, the seller might go, maybe I should look at this because they're offering a pretty good price. If I just wait a little bit longer to sell the house, it might be a good deal for me.
Yeah. Chicken and pickle. That's the place I looked up online.
I've never heard of it.
Pickle.
And it's big in Phoenix. That's interesting.
Yeah, you'll have to look it up.
I will.
It's a great, I mean, it's whoever came up with it was.
It sounds like Topgolf, right? Do you guys have Topgolf up there?
No, no, I've been to one, but we're not big enough. Here's the difference between you and I. You guys have more people. Probably you can look out your window right now and see more people than we have in our entire state. We just went over 1 million a few years ago in the whole state.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, the biggest town is Billings, which is about 9 hours east of here. And it has 110,000 people.
That sounds really nice sometimes.
Yes, we are far less populated than you guys. So
yeah.
And then this one other pickleball one, Santa Monica Mall, trying to resurrect with pickleball probably won't fly. I don't know. Like I said a minute ago, I think it's kind of a good idea for all these empty, if you're sitting on these empty buildings, why not have some income than none?
I agree. I mean, and it's inside. It doesn't take up any extra space. The building's already there.
Yeah. Let's see.
Regulation.
How to protect old water rights from being stolen. Well, if you buy a place up here, you get the water rights transferred at closing. That'd be one way to protect it. I don't really know how else you could steal it. They're all recorded, and as long as you're going through a title company, that would not be a problem. Well, here, what the heck is pickleball?
I love it.
It's basically, the way I like to describe it is if you're standing up playing ping pong on a ping pong table. So it's like a shorter version of tennis, I guess, and a little faster, and you're in a lot closer.
And what's the kitchen?
That's where I don't want to get too in depth, but it's the box right in front of the net that is marked out.
Okay.
So
I hear people talk about the kitchen all the time. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, without boring everyone to death.
Right.
It's just the part of the markings on the court. Let's see. In the OC Tustin, thereabouts, huge bookstores coming back, replacing furniture and other stuff store. In Orange County, apparently still some book lovers. That's interesting. Are you seeing anything like that in Phoenix?
No. I mean, we're seeing stores. I mean, what's interesting, again, I mean, with the whole market, right? Everybody, when the market started shifting and the interest rate started rising, everyone immediately went to the market's going to crash just like it did in 2008. And what I have always told people, what's different, because I mean, our market took a beating during that time, an absolute beating. But the difference is that the jobs at the time here were low paying jobs at call centers, construction, and tourism. And all of our employment has shifted pretty drastically, so that we've got a lot more high paying jobs. We are very tech centered. We have a lot of stuff going on to protect kind of the overall job landscape to help values stay high and the whole thing. So I know I can't remember where I was going with that. What was the question before?
Oh, just about what's going into some
Oh
of
yeah,
these
right. What's going in?
commercial.
So what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of more high end stores going in. So we've got a lot of furniture stores that are there and thriving. So not, but I don't know that I would say bookstores. I think everyone still shops at Amazon for their books.
How about like the office? Have you, you probably don't deal a lot with commercial, but how
I
about
don't.
like the office space? Have you heard in downtown Phoenix? Is it empty or is it?
No, actually, it's funny. We took our kids to a baseball game not too long ago, and the entire downtown area, which is down by the baseball stadium, has been completely revitalized. There's so much more down there than there was. Lots of restaurants. I mean, before when you would go down there and you're like, oh, let's get something to eat before you go to a baseball game. There was almost nothing down there. Completely changed. Lots of restaurants, lots of stuff going on. More like high-rise condos. There's like more like big city shopping, as far as like there's like a Trader Joe's like in like the downstairs of like a high-rise building. So they've really revitalized that whole downtown area.
Huh. I think this one's for you as well. Has
Oh.
the water bill risen with the drought? Is there a concern?
So here, I think we were in the paper everywhere about our water. And I sat through multiple classes and talks and whatever with like water attorneys about what's going on with our water. And historically, Phoenix has been they've been very good stewards with their water. And the thing that hit really big in the paper was that a place called Rio Verde, which is technically in Scottsdale, but it's governed by the county of Maricopa. And so a lot of those people were on wells or they were on hauled water. And people are like, oh my gosh, they have that here. And we do, because it's a rural area. Lots of horse property, all that can happen out there. And city of Scottsdale was supplying their water if they were hauled water, and they just turned it off. Now they turned it off, but they had given them lots of notice that it was going to be turned off. They have since kind of resolved that, and they're now getting water again. But we are not running out of water. The city of Scottsdale is one of the best at reclaiming and reusing the water to replenish the water tables and replenish all of the aquifers and all of that. And the kind of the big systems that they have to reuse the water. It's massive, and people come and study it. So I have that question asked of me a lot for people that are moving here. Like, well, what about your water? Are you really running out of water? And it's like, no. But again, I share with them, there's this thing, it's called the Arizona Water Blueprint, and it's by the ASU, and it is studied and it is looked at, and they've got question and answer things. So I'm like, here, take a look at this. And then they're open for questions, so that people that are going to have questions far more in depth than I can answer, they have a place to go.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to get rid of that one. Yeah, our water situation up here is obviously much different. Everybody has wells here. So it's kind of your own deal with the water right and all of that. But the water rights here work on, whoever was first.
Mm.
So if I have, well, I live in a town, but if I were to live out of town and then you bought a place next to me and drilled a huge well and then mine went dry, guess what? You can't do that. I get your water because I was here first. But I know everywhere out west, water is gold, and he who controls it is the king. And we've had, the state of Montana has been working with the Indian tribes up here for as long as I've lived here, and it'll probably go on as long as we all live, trying to hammer out who controls what. And there was a big thing this summer with the Flathead Lake, is in the middle of two dams, and the water level went way down this year. And I still don't know the real reason. I don't know if anybody does, but some were blaming it on the people that run the dam. Some were because federal government ran one dam and the tribe ran another dam, and some people sold electricity to other places and they had to use more water. And then they were saying that this spring the runoff wasn't proper, or it went too fast, and other people said they did the dam wrong, and who knows.
Yeah.
All that I know is that everybody was irritated because a lot of people couldn't even get their boat up to the dock at one point because the lake was so low.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that kind of talk about affecting your home value if all of a
For
sudden
sure.
you live on a lake but you can't really use it.
Yeah. That's a problem.
So, yeah. Let's see. I've been told by someone from Montana who moved here that if I ever want to move to Montana, look along I-90 and I-94. Is there anything notable along that portion besides Billings? No, I mean, there's the bigger towns are along the interstate. You have Missoula and Bozeman and Butte, which isn't a huge town, but yeah, I'm not sure what they were saying there. Bozeman is growing quite fast and getting quite large. They have a college. Montana State is there, and Missoula has the University of Montana. So those two towns are the second and third behind Billings. So they all share the same interstate. What else did we have here? If you guys have any other questions, feel free to fire away. We're kind of down at the bottom here. What did we talk about? Oh, I have a question. So, like here, one of our biggest dilemmas, and I've talked about it on these lives before, is what are you supposed to do with the housing for the regular workers? With our prices, I'm guessing your prices have gone way up. What are you guys doing down there, if anything, to alleviate that?
So I think the biggest thing that is happening here is there are a lot of home builders that are starting to do that build to rent. We have a lot of build to rent communities coming, which I'm not a big fan of because I feel like they're just stealing the homeownership right out from underneath the people that want to buy a house. I'd rather see them build a house and allow, work something so that they can actually own it. But they're building nice houses and they're doing all this, but I mean, it's not adding inventory to what we need because our inventory is still really low for what's needed. And where I talk about this again on my channel too, with it, when people call and they're like, oh, I want to live in Scottsdale. It's like, they always ask like, well, I want to live in a new build. I'm like, well, we don't have a lot of land left here. So that's why you start seeing like these little infill properties. But a lot of our new build stuff is $2.5–3 million, and it's not custom necessarily, not always, or it's that mid-rise condo that we're talking about. And then to get into new construction that is in that price point that would be for maybe like first-time home buyer, you're going way in the outskirts. And that's where I talk to people about being a little bit more cautious on the water, because those places like Santan Valley, Buckeye, places that are really far on the outskirts. The thing with our water is that we had like Scottsdale, Phoenix, Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, all the towns the cities in Phoenix that have been here for a long time, they were all put on the SRP and the so the Saltwater Project and the Colorado River. And so we're part of getting that water. They're not. And so they're on private water companies. And that's where you start to answer his question earlier, like, have you seen water prices go up? They're the ones that see the water cost spike because they're on a private water company. And so it's not to say that they're ever going to run out of water or anything like that, but you have a higher likelihood of seeing your water bill spike living in the outskirts when you're getting water from a private water company versus living in a city where you're getting water from SRP or the Colorado River. So that's kind of what we're seeing as far as kind of twofold into that. Where our more affordable housing is kind of on the outskirts. But then they kind of deal with the water thing too.
So I have a question. If I were to buy some land on the outskirts, can I drill my own well?
Depends on where you are. You can't just always drill because see, these towns are being set up, or these subdivisions are being set up where they're getting water to the house, right? But their supply is coming from a private water company. So like Queen Creek, huge town, great town. They are doing amazing things with the infrastructure. It's boomed, but it's on a private water company, even though the stuff's coming straight to your house. So it's not like you could go buy a house in a subdivision and then drill for a well. So you'd have to be outside of living in a subdivision. And then, yes, you could.
Do many people do that, or do
No.
they?
Well, depends on where you're living. But a lot of people that come here, like we have some places that still have septic. I know septic is probably really normal for you. Septic's not always normal for us. And when we've got people that are moving from, California and, other states that it's also not common. I've had some clients, I'm like, okay, just so you know, this house is on septic. And they're like, nope, not doing it. I'm like, septic's really, as long as you understand it, septic's really not that scary.
Yeah.
So there's some people that just will not do it. Now, I will tell you the Rio Verde area that we talked about earlier, where it was actually hauled water. I had some clients that would look at it and they go, well, I would tell them like, this is hauled water. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, you have to have water hauled to your house. There's a well for it at your place, but it's being hauled to you and then stored there. And it's going to affect your property value, and it is going to affect, the saleability of your house. So you just have to know that going in, at least in where I am. It might not affect you as much, but it does here.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that hauls their water. Everybody drills a well here.
Yeah, and the reason they can't drill a well there, it's too deep. The water table's not good there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Will, has there been any issues regarding traffic or overcrowding with Glacier National Park? Funny you should say that. There was just an article in the paper. I don't know, Sean, if you probably haven't been following along. Why would you? But 2 years ago, Glacier instituted this new ticketing system where you used to be, as a local or anybody, you could just show up at the front gate whenever you got there and pay your fee and go in. We always buy yearly passes. But after everybody decided to come up here at the same time during Rona, they started doing these tickets where you have to have a ticket even to go to the front gate to pay your fee. And then they end it right after Labor Day. So yeah, a week or two ago they ended it, and there was an article about, oh, look at all the traffic now. And I think they were trying to, because everyone's mad about this ticketing thing. And so now they're trying to make a point. See how much nicer it is that, when we have tickets. So those have been the issues. It's kind of the locals don't like it, me included, but they claim that it's the greatest thing ever, but it's the federal government collecting more money. So why wouldn't they claim that, is my take on it. So let's see. Mike, I have land in North Idaho, and the guy next door has kind of a junkyard, but I have a good amount of trees between our lots, so I don't see it. I'm glad I don't have an HOA fee. Well, and that's the chance you're taking. And if you have trees, that's good. But a lot of people, don't have that convenience, or they're closer than you are, and, it can affect your value. So, but yeah, if you don't want HOA fees or covenants or zoning, that's the chance you're taking. I'm guessing you guys don't have that problem down there.
No, well, you do. I mean, because there are some areas here that don't have HOA fees, and you'll have like a beautiful house next to a house that, maybe needs some work. That's one of the things, like with Paradise Valley. People that are watching this probably don't know a lot about Arizona, but Paradise Valley is like the most expensive zip code in all of Arizona. And I mean, the homes there have been around since like the 50s. Some of them have been. And you can have a home that is, $20 million next to a home that was built in the 50s and still is from the 50s. And there are some people that drive through, and then you won't have an HOA always. They'll drive through and they're like, I love it here, but I don't love that house next to me. So, I mean, I get it, but That's what you get sometimes if you're in an area like that, or you need an HOA.
Another question, another similarity we might have. We have a lot of Forest Service land around us. You guys probably have a lot of federal. It's obviously desert. But I noticed when we were down there last year, whenever it was, we went out to that Top Golf one day, and it seemed like everything behind it was wide open. Is that tribal land or is that federal land or?
No, it's all Indian land. So
Okay.
Top Golf, that Talking Stick Resort, the Talking
Mhm.
Stick Golf Course that's over there, and then on the other side, on the west side of the 101 that you saw, all of that, even the shopping center and the restaurants and all of that is Indian land.
So nobody's ever going to build unless they agree to it, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was just driving by there the other day and they're prepping it for, they farm on that still.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They farm cotton.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Right.
All right. Well, if anybody has any other questions, fire away. If not, we're coming up on almost an hour. So this is the last call for questions.
You don't
have
have
any-
to ask here. No, what is
What?
it? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
That's right. The lights are going to be turned down here in a
Right.
moment.
Right.
We have let's see. We have a Top Golf here in the Twin Cities, and it's always packed. I've actually been to that one too, Mike. My brother still lives up there. So anyway, well, I think we've hit the end. So I want to thank you, Sean, for being on, and thank everybody for tuning in. And I will be back again in 2 weeks. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. All my information's at the end. And if you have any more Arizona questions, I can pass them along to Sean. And thanks again. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
You're welcome.